Hey everybody, a quick note before we get started. As you may have seen when I tried to publish this episode twice before on YouTube, the the audio and the video was just super messed up for some reason. So you're getting just an audio episode right now, so I apologize. If you'd like, you can certainly listen to that here or on any other podcast platform. As a reminder, the podcast is available on Apple Podcasts and Spotify and Google Podcasts and Stitcher and Podbean and Pocket Casts and Pocket Beancasts and Beancast, Pocket, Stitch, Spotify, and all of the many various wonderful named podcast playing apps that exist. I think you can listen to any of them. And you can always listen totally ad-free over on Patreon, where we are doing 5 or 6 episodes a week, including instant reactions to games and scouting videos of players and rewatch videos where we reanalyze the videos, and we have lots of special guests over there and just a whole bunch of goodness. So we'd love to have you listening there, listening here, or watching here, or literally doing just about anything with us together, because we love you and we appreciate you for being here. So apologies again for the no video episode today, but you're getting an episode. It's this one. So I hope you enjoy it. We love you, Arsenal. We do. We love you, Arsenal. We do. We love you, Arsenal. We do. Oh, Arsenal, we love. This is the ArsenalVision Post-Match Podcast. My name's Elliot Smith. You can block me on Twitter. Ink Gunner. Heard that quite a lot. Second half at the Etihad. It's not the first time we've heard that quite a lot in the second half in Manchester. This not quite as bad a day as that, although maybe a worse day than that, in the sense that there was a hell of a lot more on the line this time. If you don't know what I'm referring to, it may be best that I don't invoke it, but we did hear that quite a lot, as Tim will attest, during the 8-2 at Old Trafford. Not 8-2, 4-1, so that's 50% improvement, but a bit of a grim day. A little ray of sunshine on a grim day. I will say that Andrew over at Arsblog, he and James and Andrew Allen donated their full capability this month to the fundraiser, adding 50,000 euros to take the fundraiser over 411,000 pounds. So while everybody wants to hear about the football, or maybe you don't, maybe this is what you'd rather hear about anything but the football, it would be remiss if I did not thank Andrew and James and just everybody who has done the incredible work. And we will certainly, I think, hear some thank yous coming from the foundation themselves in the near future. So we move, as they say. It is a bit of a grim day. And I just want to say this, we did our instant reaction, and I dipped into the Discord that we have for our Patreon, and that place is unvarnished at times. And the thing that I found interesting is just the array of emotion in there. Some people really wanted rage. They wanted to hear us rage. They wanted to hear anger and outrage and fury. I have to confess, I never got to rage because I just felt dispirited and a little bit resigned early on in that game, and basically almost going into it. I saw a lot of people, in fact, Tim and I had an engagement on Twitter where I said, I wish we had done the business in the last few games, because then this wouldn't feel so terrifying. It would feel like we had a little margin for error. But Tim said, no, I feel the opposite. Now I don't care. It just kind of feels like it is what it is. And I do sort of think by full time, there were a lot of shrugging of shoulders rather than gnashing of teeth and raging at the outcome. So it'll be interesting to measure the emotion, but we also need to talk about the football. And we will do all of that with Paul, who you can find on Twitter at PosMyPants. Hello, Pos.
Woohoo.
Okay, better late than never. And you can find Clive on Twitter at ClivePFC. Hello, Clive.
Hello.
And you can find Tim on Twitter at Stominator. Hello, Tim.
Hello there.
It's full boat. Haven't done it in a while, and I'm just thrilled that we get a chance to. Tim, I'm going to start with you. First of all, I want to thank you for your phenomenal support. The away fans, obviously, in good voice. And there is something about getting slapped that makes you want everyone to hear that you still love your club and get behind them, right? It's almost like if it's 1-1 and you concede a late goal, there's more grousing than if it's 3-0 and you just want the club to know that you love them. But let's not do the what was the atmosphere at the Etihad thing. Let's do it this way instead. Before we get into the football and how we got here, what is your prevailing emotion today? What is your prevailing emotion as you think about this season, the journey we've been on, and how we've reached a cliff. You know what it almost reminds me of, you guys? You know in the cartoons when the character runs off the cliff, but he runs like a few extra feet and then pauses and then falls? You know what I mean? It almost feels like we ran off the cliff after Liverpool, West Ham, and Southampton, but we hadn't fallen yet. And then we realized there was no cliff underneath us yesterday, and we fell hard. So what's your emotion? Do you connect with rage today? Where are you at?
Yeah, no. So I put an analogy in quite poor taste in a WhatsApp group with some friends, which I think it's only right to share. Which is
oh god, all right, my editing skills are not great, so careful.
No, I said I had the feeling of visiting a dying grandparent, where you just like want to get it over with. Just before kickoff, the person I was standing next to kind of said to me, "Tim, how do you see this going?" And I said, do you really want to know? And he went, "Oh, go on then." I said, "I think this is going to be over by half time. I think they're going to absolutely slap us because I can see how they're playing and I can see how that we're playing, and I don't see that that gap being bridged." So I was very, very prepared for this. This is pretty much exactly what I expected from this game. So I can't feel rage about it because, and I wasn't just protecting my feelings by saying and thinking that. In fact, I didn't say it to that many people. I just felt it. And you know what I said to you, Elliot, after the West Ham game, that I had that feeling after Anfield. I was just like, I think this is going to slip away. I just had that feeling, even though you can contextualize a draw at Anfield, albeit from a good position. I just thought this just isn't what teams that win the league do. And it just doesn't look like we're ready for what April means when you're going for the league title. April's just different. It just is. We talked about this months ago. So I was expecting and anticipating all of this, and I did not feel nervous at all going into the game because I fully expected this. Now, my preoccupation, I think you guys all put it brilliantly on the instant reaction, which was about like, don't let this define the season. Don't go quietly into the night. Like, even if the aim is, let's try and get it to the last day, let's try and get it to the last week. City have got some tough fixtures in the last 7 days of the season. Like, let's push them at least, and you know, even if they go and win every game, like, bully for them. Like, no one cares about Manchester City. You know, they don't. Like, no one cares about Man City, and there's a reason no one cares about them or has any depth of feeling about them, because they're a machine. Basically, there's not very much that's human about them. So, my preoccupation now is that, like, there's definitely an extent to which this game has been hanging over everyone for a while. Clive and I were talking about this before. I think the home game was hanging over us. I think this game was hanging over us. I have some regrets that we have had big tactical issues going into both games against them. The first game was very much we'd run dry after the kind of Eddie Nketiah thing, and Trossard hadn't quite come into the team yet and changed things. That took another week or two to take hold. And this time, like, we've got the Saliba thing and we haven't cracked that at all at this point. So I've got some regrets about that. And, like, I'd love to have really seen us play City in October or November when we were hot and they were not. But, you know, we didn't get that. So really my preoccupation is all about Tuesday. Set this right. Set the tempo right for the rest of the season. City are going to win the league. I think we can all see that. But let's not let them win it by 10 points. Let's not let them have a procession to it. Let's push them, because they've got big games coming up. It could happen. And even if it doesn't, even if none of that makes a blind bit of difference, how we go into this summer could. It really could. So let's not let that happen.
I agree. And I said this on Twitter, and some people said that I was making excuses. I didn't mean it as an excuse, not even remotely. There are no excuses for failing to show up that way in that kind of game. But last season, the Spurs game got rescheduled. And it got rescheduled to a moment where the wheels were just about coming off. We were just barely keeping it together, and injuries played a role in that. And it didn't go well for us. And ironically, Rob Holding was sort of at the center of that experience. This is a rescheduled game. And I said, I think there was a point in this season when we could have gone to the Etihad and competed with City. But it's not this point. The way they are playing in this moment, combined with the way we're playing in this moment, was the wrong cocktail for us to be playing them. And we wanted to be in the big game. The disappointment for me is that we went out with a whimper. We went out with a whimper. And I think if the players look at this, it won't be that they lost the big game. It'll be that they were never in the big game. And that's the next hurdle. Because, I think Mikel is right. He said, someone asked him, I think in the post-match interview, do you have to be perfect to beat Man City, or do they have to have a down season to win the title? And he said, well, we've been here all season. We've been leading the table all season. If we had beaten West Ham, if we had beaten Southampton, we don't actually have to beat Manchester City to win the title. So this is a bit of an own goal in some ways, but I just think the timing of this was wrong. And Clive, when you look at the way the game started, Mikel said this: the way they were able to go from the back to being in front of our goal so quickly. Everybody thinks about Pep Guardiola and positional football as like advanced calculus. Some of this was just arithmetic. Long balls, win the duel, away you go. Beat the first man pressure, run it up the pitch, and you're immediately in front of their goal. We couldn't mark De Bruyne, and we couldn't live with Haaland. And football actually doesn't have to be complicated. It was that simple. And I think it won't be a fun night for Rob Holding to revisit if he watches this film. But I think there were a lot of players that just got basic assignments wrong. Do you have any explanation for, especially early on, how easy it was for them to just go from being deep to being in front of our goal in one pass or one run up the pitch?
Oh, I'm glad you asked me this question.
Finally, I got a question right. One that he's going to answer.
I'm going to answer this one. Me and Tim already had a pre-pod, right? And I was saying to him, due to people like him and others, I've been to lots of games this season. And the first time I felt a little bit uneasy about Arsenal was the Brentford game. I just checked the numbers today. They played over 60 long balls that day. Into Ivan Toney, and when you look at Ivan Toney's shoulders, they're incredible, right? And I actually thought Saliba got a bit of stick that day, but I remember saying, I'm glad we had Saliba because I don't think anyone else could have held him that day. Do you know what I mean? And that was the first time I saw stretched out. Everton did something similar. We beat them 4-0, but trust me, in that first half, they were decent. And we scored a goal for half-time and ran away. And so everyone's talking about our line height. But for me, it's not the line height per se, it's the distance between our front man and our back man. And the distances we have to cover in centre midfield. And what's that uncovered? And so I first started ranting about second balls, didn't I, for a few weeks. Second ball, we got to get better second balls, got to control the game. And then I started to change my thought process again. And looking at the fatigue in our players, looking at the fact we had an injury, looking at the fact that our fourth choice centre-half is having the most touches in the game. I thought, and we're having build-up issues. We're moving our centre-mid to the right-hand side. I'm thinking, we got to change again. So we play a 3-2-5 or a 2-3-5. We have a 5+5 system. And all I was saying to people was, it should be a 6+4. We've got to have more people behind the ball to create a level of coverage in the central areas rather than playing our 2-8s really, really high. And you are now asking them to run backwards. So as you were watching this game last night on your TV screens, or if you're in the ground, when you saw our midfield three running backwards consistently, that tells you we have a problem. That's back to, I said it before, that's back to Ceballos and El Neni running backwards across big spaces in Emery days. And the big trick for our team has been the distances by which we play in, the fact we've got five-a-side technicians, agile ball carriers, wing forwards that look fantastic in small spaces. And what's happened is teams have worked out, if you go long enough so you can get the second ball and you can stretch them out. And when they're stretched out, we can athletically beat them and challenge them. We can't challenge their technique. We can't challenge their relentlessness. If their relentlessness drops off and their technique is then challenged, you become a 50-50 second ball game. It becomes a one-on-one game, and our best one-on-one defender is sitting in the stands. And that's what's happened to our team. And so you have a choice to make, and this is my one critique, and this is something that's, maybe it's how I look at football. And I'm a pragmatist, Elliot, and I would have locked the back door. I would have a look at the game. When you get to big games, have a look at them. Don't just dive out. Have a look at them. Look at what they're trying to do and then impose yourself. But our manager, he's changed all our seasons by being courageous, starting fast starts, going at teams. And I've enjoyed those days, so I can't critique too much. But when you come to these games in April, I would like to see a touch more pragmatism. I would like to see another player in midfield in a slightly deeper starting position to make sure we can create combinations and connections. I would have gone a 4-2-2 type system, 2 in front, 2 wide men, and 2 false 9 centre forwards in Odegaard and Jesus connecting each wing side. There are things you can do. People can say back three. People can say what they like. But in the end, we were too brave and we got picked off in the central areas because we overpressed and they went over us. And I'm afraid we haven't got the ability at this moment in time to consistently control those game states.
And I'll level you. People are gonna wax lyrical about Pep. But let's be honest. Pep did in this game what basically they've been doing to us since Saliba went out. This isn't new. Leave Rob Holding, press everybody else, let him have all the ball, make him hurt you, go long, and take advantage of the lack of mobility, quality, control in the back line without Saliba. And it's worked in all the games. It just so happens that City are a level above, to 7 levels above any of the opposition we faced. And so it really hurt us in a way that other teams haven't necessarily been able to. I do think that like this. So this isn't about mentality; it's about talent, but it's also about mentality in this respect. You talked about courage, Clive. I think we lack courage in one way. I don't think the players believed they were going to win this game, and I think what happened is they were terrified of the transitions. What happens if we lose the ball? Terrified of it. Odegaard gave the ball away sloppily once, right, and they almost score from it. And I think as a result, we just didn't pass the ball. Extra touch, easy pass. Where was Xhaka? Where was Odegaard? They never got the ball. That's partly their fault. It's also because nobody wanted to play vertical passes between the lines. Partly because City are very well organized and their press is good. But look where we went. We wound going right. The one place you shouldn't go when you're pressed, out to the touchline where you have no angle and you can't get out. We took the easy passes and City killed us. But Paul, I mean, Mikel Arteta made a decision. I'm not going to be wise after the fact. He made a decision I thought was the right one. He stuck with Holding. He went with the 11 best players we had available in their 11 best positions, plus Rob Holding. But when push comes to shove, Rob Holding was not up to this. And, love him, as I think a lot of people do, for who he is as a person, who he is as in the group. As a footballer, he was not up to this level. And it was getting very unpleasant to watch the way he was struggling through it. At some point, you look at the manager and you say, you don't get to replay this game. You don't get to decide when City get a second goal and kill this game. Okay? Granted, maybe he's offside, maybe he's not offside, whatever. I mean, they could have had 3 other ones. They could have had a penalty on Partey in the 5th minute? I mean, there were other calls that went our way. The offside one, I'll leave that to people who draw lines and see angles. Did Mikel need to change it? Like early, like 30 minutes? Recognizing we're going to get shredded if I stick with this player in this position, this formation. Because I had we gone in at 1-0, which we very well could have, coming out of the half the same way was only going to yield one result. So should he have changed it? When should he have changed it?
Yes, he should have. He seemed committed to not having a plan B. He's obviously smart enough to have a plan B. He's had plan B for other teams. He could have started with plan B, but he went with plan A, which was, we'll match up what we do against what you do. We talk about this in the instant reaction. And our stuff against your stuff. We're one of the best pressing teams in the league. So we will press your back line. And Pep said, come press my back line. And see what happens to you. And it was clear we were chasing shadows. And I think, for me, the whole game comes down to, we pressed them, it didn't work. They pressed us, it worked. They played out from our press, as Clive pointed out, often by going over the press, which gives you all sorts of options going around it when your opponent pressing you thinks you might go over it too. And the other way around, they pressed aggressively as they did in the second half at the Emirates. And we got basically no joy playing through the press. There were no streaking counterattacks. There was no getting at their back line because they were all pushed forward. If you think of what we do with our pressing, it's very aggressive. We back up the first two guys with basically everybody else in midfield, and you have Partey all on his own and a couple of centre backs and huge amounts of space. And you wonder, where was Odegaard and Xhaka in this game? They were chasing around their back line and the ball was going over their heads. And we did, like, I get it if Arteta thought we could get at them. So I woke up this morning thinking, I wonder if my analysis, I still feel that holds. And open up my phone, there's an article from Michael Cox saying, we didn't know how to press them and Pep knew how to outplay our press. And what he says they did that was a little different was they kept four guys back, not the move the guy into midfield, not the John Stones into midfield thing while they were being pressed. They kept four, so that gave them one more guy than we were expecting. And that was enough. It seemed so basic. Mikel must have seen it, but he was committed to this approach. He must have known what the difference was. And you could see us. You'd see Odegaard chasing the guy on the right, over to the goalkeeper, over to the left, and they just move the ball around to the side and then pop it over the top. And off they went. And like that.
You know when I knew there was a problem?
That isolated everybody. Yeah.
Second minute. They have it in the back line. De Bruyne drops all the way back to Haaland. Gundogan comes into the half space.
Yep.
They've got a back four, so we go man to man. They give it to Gundogan, and no one's got him, and he just runs it all the way to the attacking third. Like, literally, Gundogan just carries the ball. Second minute, past everybody, all the way to the attacking third. And
by pulling our press forward, it meant the guys behind them were isolated 1v1 and one good run. Like, Michael Cox makes a brilliant point, which is, you got Kevin De Bruyne in midfield thinking, all right, well, Gabriel's going to press it if it comes to me, so I'll just make the move to the other side, to the other centre-back where Gabriel can't follow me. So you have these really clever guys, Gundogan, Silva, De Bruyne, basically isolated 1v1, and they just got to make a clever run to a place their marker is not going to follow them. And so much of that game explains itself.
Yeah.
Their clever midfield running killed us in combination with Haaland always being able to win the knockdowns.
Yeah. Tim, would you... Well, first of all, like the opening goal, it's a long ball. It's real... Look, give Haaland his due. He uses his size and his quality to pin Holding and first time it to De Bruyne. I think Partey is unsure whether he should be tracking the run or trying to help with the long ball. He's run past. De Bruyne is in. And then Ramsdale, my opinion is he should do better from there, but it's really well hit. It starts outside and comes back. It would have been an excellent save if he made it, and he made many excellent saves in the game. But that first goal, sets them on their way. I'm curious why you think all they did was push De Bruyne up a little bit. And we treated it like it was nuclear fusion, nuclear physics. We had no answer for it whatsoever. So what do you think was the cause of why that little tweak in particular hurt us? And I'll ask you the Holding question, since I don't think we have a clear answer on it. At what point would you have said, I got to call time on this. I have to step in and do something to bail this guy out and bail the team out?
Yeah. We talked about this in the stadium about Holding, and after about half an hour, we were just like, he's got to come off. And it's and again, like, I've tried to keep in mind, don't just pin it all on one player, and it's not just all about one player. There is definitely a chain reaction that is not all Holding's fault. At the same time, there is, I think, a significant quality drop off, but he kept just getting attracted out. They kept fishing him out to the halfway line. He kept going fishing. And against Haaland, I don't think he can do that against Haaland. I think that's where, the coach is probably guilty, because you got, the coach didn't feel funny about trying to protect him in the Southampton game by putting Partey next to him, not in a defensive sense, but in a possession sense. Yeah. Like, that's got to be quite awkward to do as a coach, to say, actually, your passing's not very good. I need to get someone to come and help you do that. And it's kind of the same with him going, like, just there was an attack at one point in the first half. It might have been the one where Haaland put it wide, where you'd have put your house on him scoring, and we were looking at it and we were like, Holding was barely in our half that the whole time that move unfolded. And it's like, what do you think you're doing? Like, where do you think you're going? Like, sometimes as a player as well, you have to respect and understand your own flaws as a player, whether they're athletic or otherwise. Like, sometimes you've just got to do that. And I'm sorry, I just didn't see him doing it. I just didn't see him learning. I just kept seeing him trying to go into contact on the halfway line, trying to go into, and it was, maybe he was told to do that. I don't know. Maybe he was, but
there was one particularly bad one where Haaland was like on the halfway line and he went like running out towards him. It was never close to getting there. And Haaland slips De Bruyne in again. It was like...
Exactly. And you've got to, even if you've been told to do that by your coach, you've still got to recognise when, do you know what? I'm definitely not going to get there. So on this occasion, I recognise that it's bad process, that I'm not there, but now I'm not there. I've got to sit off and I've got to do something else. You've got to show that game intelligence. But in terms of the tweak that City made, I do think it was reasonable, because like one of the things that I think teams have identified is if we've got like Partey in the centre and Xhaka like pushed up into the forward line, there's quite a big distance between those two things. And essentially what City said is just said, okay, we'll just stand behind Partey. And look, this is the next evolution in our team, I think. I think basically and I completely understand it, this season's been about muscle memory. It's been about refining plan A so that you can do it in your sleep. That takes time. You've got to go through this. You've got to do this. But what you see with City, and you didn't see it with City under Pep straight away, it took a couple of years to happen, but they do tweak. They tweaked for us. Like, they weren't embarrassed about playing Kyle Walker. Like, Kyle Walker barely plays anymore, but they looked at what we have on the left in Martinelli, a killer one-on-one, and, a really, really quick player. And they said, okay, we'll just put Kyle Walker there because he suits this game. And they had a deficiency as well. We all thought they were going to be playing Laporte at left back because Ake was out, and some of us thinking, Saka will have Laporte. They didn't put him out. They didn't put him out for the same reason that we were excited about the prospect of him being out. Now, it's different for Manchester City because they can just magic up Kyle Walker from the reserves, and we don't have that kind of same strength in depth. But that's. To me, that's just a learning point, and that's the next evolution of our team, particularly when we're playing Champions League football next season. This season has been like template football, and I don't use that pejoratively. I've been using that word all season, and I've been using it to describe our good performances, because we've had a template where we go into games and go, if we do that, we got an excellent chance of winning this game. But it's become a bit frayed around the edges. We've lost key personnel. Other teams have worked some things out. Next season, what I really want to see is that kind of, like when we played Tomiyasu at left back against Liverpool. Brilliant innovation. Like, me and Clive were talking about this before. Like, teams are banking on getting second balls against us at the moment. Liverpool wanted to do that as well, but we played Tomiyasu, so there was no second ball because Tomiyasu wins them all, and we knew that. And so just stuff like that, or little tweaks, that's what I'm looking for next season when we go into games where you stay within your principles, but you can surprise teams tactically. We're not there yet. We can't. And I think that's why Arteta's had some reticence about experimenting to get around the Saliba absence. I think there are things he could have done, and we'll go into those, but I do understand why there's definitely a timeline where he tries one of those things and it doesn't make any difference. Maybe even makes things worse.
It certainly underlines the fact that these teams that have been the Titans of the Premier League the last couple seasons, they got there. I mean, adding Haaland mattered, but they got there not so much with who they added up front, but who they added at the back. We saw what Liverpool became with Van Dijk. We've seen what City have become when they upgraded their center backs. I mean, you can sort of remember the tail end of the Vincent Kompany years. They weren't like this, and losing Saliba has changed not just the way we defend, but the way we build play, the confidence with which we cover space. Clive, the thing that's really interesting to me, though, look, we conceded 2 to Liverpool, 2 to West Ham, 3 to Southampton, and 4 to City. Fine. We couldn't play any football. And that is the thing that I don't think we've seen. Even in those prior games, we played a hell of a lot of good football, and we created a hell of a lot of threat. In this game, we couldn't find the connections at all. And in a weird way, there wasn't a lot of football played in this game. City passed it around at the back, then went long, and we're in. It wasn't one of those games. Those games we used to play against them where they had us pinned deep in our defensive third and we're just hemmed in there for 40 minutes at a time. There wasn't any of that. It was kind of a broken play game. Long balls. We were at the back. They were at the back. Then turn us over, hit it long, and we're gone. Like, where did the football go? And what did they do, or what did we not do? Where, all right, fine, we were vulnerable at the back, but we never really hurt them. We never played much football. We couldn't connect to Odegaard or Xhaka or Jesus.
And yet we'd like 48% of the possession.
Yeah, we had the ball.
47%.
We just didn't play. Yeah, exactly. Like both teams shared the ball about equally, but the threat that was created with that equal possession was night and day. Where'd our football go?
So how do you create threat? You create threat by beating your man, winning your duel. How many people on that pitch was in charge of their duel?
Holland was.
Yeah. How many rephrase it? How many Arsenal people were in charge of their duel?
Okay. Yeah, not many. No.
And that's the key, right? And when you watch a game of football, don't forget what you like. When the ball goes into Saka's feet and 3 people come over and he goes past 2 of them and pops it off and then gets it back again, we're excited. But when they are prepared to play a right-footed left back who wants to monster him when he comes inside, takes it off him and runs 40 yards with it, that has an impact on you. It has an impact on your ability to separate next time. It has an impact to Odegaard, who's already chased Gundogan back once, couldn't catch him. Now he's trying to chase Akanji back once, couldn't catch him. Next time he's in space, he's standing there resting. We don't have a connection. We've got Xhaka wasn't right to play. Martinelli had 11 touches. Xhaka's our connector on that side. He's someone that storms into the box if we're in charge. If we're not in charge, can he get back in to help out the other centre mid? Couldn't do it on this day. For me, he wasn't right to play. Right, so you take out those 2 8s. By the way, they haven't had a good game for a little while now. Based on the length of the past maps, you can see it. The distances are too big for them. They are not dominating football matches. Right, so Big Olus is on the other bloke who's getting a lot of stick in the number 6, but I can see him on the screen. I can see him. I can't see the other 2. Right, so we're not in charge of our duels. And when they chip over our midfield and goes to a centre back, I said last night in the instant reaction, who's running up behind someone, tickling his bum, and then watching him turn around and lay the ball off, that's not good enough. That really isn't. And so you have a decision to make as a coach. And I will say this, I think there were better solutions. I've got no qualms in saying that Man City are the best team in the country, best team in Europe, and they'll probably be the best team in the world. So there's no issues here. I feel totally unburdened, and all I've got is pure clarity about what we need to do going forward. Tim mentioned there that they weren't embarrassed to change. That's a great line. That's exactly it. We need to be not embarrassed to squeeze the most out of the group. We could have done different things. We could have stabilised in a different way. I've been boring you guys with the word stabilising for the last 3-4 weeks because we haven't looked stable. And there are ways to approach this before it slaps you in the face. And we got slapped in the face. Now, I'm torn between a coach really driving his principles home and the overall principles are more important than any one game. But I don't know. There comes a point when you have to recognise the rhythm of a season. And I don't think we are. I think another thing that I think Man City have done better than us is they've managed their energy better. And so there were times in January, I look at their bench, it's basically the first 11 that played against us was all sitting on the bench. Now, they can do that. We can't. We've had the greatest season in many, many years because our first 11 has been on the pitch. But many of our players have played more than 25 games, not as many as Man City's have in the Premier League. And we look tired. We look smaller. We look tired. We look younger. And that's what I saw. And I saw it in the Southampton game, and we squeezed our way back, and I saw it again. And so you got to say to yourself, okay, the next phase is, we all know the next phase is to add a bit of depth, a bit of quality. So we have, I think Tim wrote something today, I read today, we have a number of trusted players, and we need to increase that number. And when we increase that number, we can make more rotations. And it's about trusting people at the right time as well. We have bought a couple of players that I think are trustworthy, that haven't been trusted. And I think an opportunity was missed. It would not have changed the result, but I don't think we got as much out of the Arsenal Orange as we could have done.
Can I just come in on that very specifically, particularly because you talked about stability and you talked about a couple of players as well. Like, again, I'm not pretending this is easy, because then you have to think about who to take out, etc., etc. And I don't think it would change this game, but I'm thinking like Southampton, West Ham, Liverpool. We lost control of all of those games. We lost control. We lost control of the ball. We gave the ball away sloppily. And, a lot of that's because Saliba's out. But in all of those games, Jorginho and Trossard have been on the bench. And do you remember after the West Ham game, I argued with you, Elliot, I thought Jorginho and Trossard was a great change. That actually, we argued about whether Trossard could have come on in midfield, and we keep Gabriel Jesus on. But what happened? We lost control of that game. We brought those two on, and West Ham barely had a shot after that. Yeah. Now, we didn't generate enough threat, but we stopped giving the ball away. And so when we've got a bit of a problem about keeping possession and not giving the ball away and things like that, and Jorginho and Trossard, two of your best controlling players who take care of the football very, very well, aren't on the pitch. Like, again, I'm not pretending it's easy, because you've got to take out someone quite trusted to get both of those players in. You probably got to change something. But yeah, two of our best controlling players have been on the bench while we've been losing control of the ball.
Yeah. And I think it's really difficult to analyze a game like this without going to things like mental fragility or fear or freezing, because like ultimately the rest of it, I mean, we saw what it was. Pep had a tactical tweak. We were missing a key player. They exploited it ruthlessly. Their talent, De Bruyne and Haaland, who may be the two best players in the league, dominated us. We had no answer for either of them. I said on the instant reaction, I think De Bruyne is better than Haaland. That I think he has been the man who has elevated City over the last 5 seasons to where they are. A lot of people disagree with that. Well, he had 2 goals and an assist in this game, and was absolutely imperious in the way he played. And our number 10, who wears, the number 8, couldn't get in the game. And he's going to have to get to that level, right? That's the level we need to get to. You have to have someone generational in your team to be a generational side. Thierry Henry, right? Best player in the history of the Premier League, elevated Arsenal to be one of the best teams that the league has ever seen. And they had a few of them in there, by the way, and Vieira and Pires, and there were more. But in Bergkamp, we're still so young. But Paul, like, I don't know if we managed the emotion of the moment. Well, I'm curious how you look at some of the flare-ups, because I know Clive liked it. He said in the instant reaction, like, good, get in there. Don't let them grab you by the scruff of your neck and push you around and bully you psychologically. Show that you're up for the fight. I do think there's a little bit, it rings a little hollow to be up for the fight when you're 3-0 down and your heads have dropped and you've been monstered on the pitch a little bit. Then it looks a little like petulance. So it is a difficult balance, and I don't know where I am on that. Like Ben White, the Arsenal fans are saying good on Ben White, standing up for himself and his teammate at full time, getting into that little scrap. And all the other neutrals that I'm seeing, and who cares what they think, but just as another perspective, are like, just talk about being a sore loser, basically. Like you couldn't handle it with class, that you got beat on the pitch. I see it both ways. You have to defend the badge. You have to defend your teammates. You have to stand up for yourself and say, you beat us on this day, but we're not bullied by you. But I don't know how you see the emotional reaction, because I thought Jesus, for example, looked really wound up, and he plays like that. That's kind of who he is, right? Xhaka got into it a little bit. There were a couple of scraps that we got into. How do you think we handled the emotion of the moment in terms of defending the badge and defending ourselves? Do you like to see the fight that they had emotionally, or did it feel like the occasion was too big for them?
Yeah, no, I'm going to back Clive up in this fight.
Always a good choice.
Yeah, no, you got to get stuck in. I mean, who's the greatest ever team we've ever had? The Invincibles. They weren't exactly shy about getting stuck in, backing themselves.
Or getting red cards, right?
Or getting red cards. They were okay if it cost them in a game. Well, they mightn't have been okay, but that's how it was. Like, a team that is not going to take shit from people, even if it's not a good day, that's what you need. So, like, Partey nearly got himself a red card with a impetuous kick out late on in the game. That's the one I'd be like, well, that doesn't make sense, guys. But you have a bunch of frustrated players on the pitch. We talked about confusion, players looking confused, frustration, players disappearing. I think they broke our system. We leaned heavily into this pressing. They broke our press. Players are then in the wrong positions on the pitch. Partey's frustrated because he's like, well, do I hold my position? Do I have to run the length of the pitch with the guy who was basically sitting behind me? And after a short period of time, you see players saying, this isn't working, and the manager doesn't change it, and we go and judge the players, and really it's the fact that we committed to a system that after, like, fair play to Arteta. This is how he wanted to play them. And after 30 minutes, it was clear it wasn't working. By 45 minutes, they should have been 2-3 up. Halftime comes. We didn't do anything different in the second half. Now, maybe he has his reasons in terms of process, in terms of the players he has, that he doesn't think he wants to pivot to something else. But it seemed like a clear decision to play one way for the whole game. But meanwhile, he's starting to lose his players along the way on the pitch. I do think there are other things going on here. We're playing them probably at the worst time for us, the best time for them. The other lesson you'll learn from this game is what's a team who looks like they're peaking late on in the season look like versus what's a team that's running out of gas. And to be pressing that aggressively in the crunch game late in the season, you better have all your guys top level, top fitness, fresh, because they're fresh. They're peaking for Champions League, Real Madrid, blah, blah, blah. We're not. We're hanging on to what we got. And like when you go through the squad, I was looking this a little earlier while looking for my mute button. But if I look at player number 14 in our team has had 6, in terms of outfield players, the 14th player in terms of total number of starts for us, we've had 6 starts for our 14th player. They've had 15. So their 14th player has made 15 starts. Our 4th player, Martinelli, has had 32 starts out of 33. Their 4th player has had 23 starts. You can just randomly go down the list. Our 8th player in our squad in terms of starts has had 26. Theirs has had 19. And on and on and on. They're so much fresher than we are. Now, okay, they've also played 2 less games. So they are planned to peak late. The problem for us was we got off to a flyer. We were winning. Now, do you decide to dial it back a bit and not win so much because you want to peak later on in the season if you're Arsenal? No, you go hell for leather, and we did. So part of the problem is we're judging a team that went out early, went fast. It's like the Tour de France, and you're going for a stage win, and you're out in front, and you're like, you kill yourself for the stage win, but you probably killed yourself, and you got it, but that gets you your top 4, that gets you everything you were looking for. In fact, it's going to get you to second place, but it's going to kill you for actually winning the Tour de France. And the guy has been pacing himself, waiting for the mountains, all that kind of stuff. There's a whole craft in managing a season. And basically, we've got 11 players, and we know who those 11 players are, and Trossard. And if he were fit, we'd have Tomiyasu. And that's all we got. And they've got 18 players. They use their 13 through 18 throughout the season. They move them in and out, and that allows them to make tactical tweaks. Like, as Clive said, we probably had a player or two who wasn't fully there. Maybe Partey's managing himself. Maybe Xhaka wasn't actually well. Maybe this wasn't the game for Jesus. To your emotional point, I think Jesus's emotions.
So you're going to answer the question now? Is that when this is the start of the answer here? Okay, good. Yeah, just checking.
Yeah, like and Arteta, but Arteta doesn't really have a choice over that.
No, I'm not putting it on Arteta. It's a young team, and I'm curious if you thought, well, yeah. All right. Anyway, yeah.
his options are limited, right? In terms of emotions, in terms of tactics, in terms of tweaks, in terms of he's got to play the 11+1, and he doesn't want to take Jesus out of the City game, even though maybe Trossard was the right guy. Trossard's been fucking great. That's the revelation here. So we got like 12, 13. We got to get to 18 players who he's making change.
Well,
like bringing in Kyle Walker, etc. Like, what a great player to make a tactical tweak or to have to fall back on. And that's probably his player number 17 or 18.
Well, then that's an interesting point. Tim, I hate to do the hindsight thing, but I think this game, frankly, do we really need to go into whether it was offside or not offside? If you see it as offside, great. If you don't, like, maybe it would have changed the game, whatever. Do we need to break down the goals they scored? I don't think we do. We know how we got beaten. Clive covered it. We've talked about it. Is there an argument that a string that Arteta needs to add to his bow is managing the squad better over a season? Like, he wants to win everything. And when he has a team that's ready to win everything, we should try to win everything. But like, it is the fact that our season went up in smoke when we lost Saliba and Tomiyasu, and we lost them both in a Europa League tie. And if you look at the minutes in some of the legs and you look at some of the players that look a little bit jaded right now, I dare say Saka might be among them. Maybe Thomas Partey a little bit, but like Saka among them for sure. There's a lot of minutes that went into Europa League group stage games and knockout ties. And like, none of this is let's kill Mikel for not rotating, but it's like you have to look at where we are and how we've come up short this season and how we don't do it again. And to Paul's point, if you only have 12 players, you have to be really, really sure they're going to be ready. Look at City. What do City do every season? They peak at the end of the season. And everybody's laughing at some weird line, oh, Bernardo Silva's playing left back in like January. Or, wow, they've dropped Kevin De Bruyne. Everybody who plays Fantasy Premier League is like, I hate Pep. He's always dropping the player I captain. But you know what? He's not dropping them in April, and he's not dropping them in May. And they just come on like an absolute avalanche at the end of seasons. So is some of where we are now maybe a reflection on not having an eye on, hey, we have a small squad, and I need to really, really, really focus up on making sure it can run the full marathon?
I see that more as somewhere we're going rather than somewhere we've come from, because essentially we threw all the cups in the bin this year. Like, do you remember that Brighton Carabao Cup game? I swear Arteta nearly smiled. We went out. I think we all did. The FA Cup at City, he rested lots of players.
But can I say one thing on that? I think he sort of split the baby in the sporting tie, right? Because he did rotate quite a bit for the away leg, saying like tipping his cap to the fact that Premier League was a priority. But then because we didn't get the result we might have wanted away, he didn't have the conviction to do it again in the home leg. You know what I mean?
Maybe. Quite, and maybe that was always in the planning. Maybe it was always
fair.
Like,
fair point.
I think they were trying to go through at 70% if they could, and they nearly did.
Shouldn't Saliba be able to jog around a pitch against Sporting? I mean,
I'm not saying we got unlucky. Like, Saliba's not hurt because he played too many minutes. We got unlucky, but we lost two players.
It wasn't the most demanding game he'll ever play as a centre back.
He definitely did that before
at the Fulham game. A lot of people said it's that fall in the Fulham game.
And probably exacerbated it in this game. But I think there's a couple of things here. I think first of all, we did rotate quite a lot. You're right, like most of the players were always in the squad. I think those minutes in the group stage were managed. But I mean, first off, I think that is a symptom of squad size because we haven't got 22 players to make 11 changes. And particularly one area where that's probably hurt us, a lack of depth, is in the wide positions because because Smith Rowe either hasn't been fit or in the first half of the season wasn't fit in the second half. Like, he hasn't been able to take any burden off of Martinelli, for example. So we've had to kill Saka and Martinelli, basically. Trossard's come in and helped that a bit, but actually what Trossard's biggest use has been that we were able to ease Gabriel Jesus back in and we were able to absorb an injury to Nketiah, and he's actually been more of a centre forward than a wide forward so far. That's kind of the problem he's really fixed.
Even in this game, Tim, when he came on as centre forward, and we pushed Gabriel Jesus
went wide
to the wing. Yeah,
which I thought was a really interesting thing to look at. And I wouldn't be surprised if maybe we saw that in one of the next couple of games, and maybe Martinelli sat down for a game. That's mega harsh because it's not his fault. He had 11 touches last night, and he's been brilliant before this game. But it's about rotation, not dropping. We just need to deepen the pool of players. But the other thing is as well, next season we're in the Champions League. We're not going to be playing Europa League teams in the Champions League. But what we need to be able to do, I've been thinking about this earlier. I actually think this relationship, as much as I think we should be playing second string teams in the Europa League group stage, I actually think over the last 4 or 5 years it's created this really unhealthy split squad where you've got the Europa League guys and the Premier League guys, and actually what you want in your squad is a more harmonious relationship between the two. Because what I remember this in Wenger's first season, the Europa League squad was a load of players who were halfway out the door. It was Wilshere, it was Iwobi, it was Giroud, it was Coquelin. It was Chambers. It was all these players that just hadn't quite done it or were on their way out for different reasons, and we ended up with this really weird situation where we had the squad split in half. And actually, I don't think that's that healthy. I think what we want to move towards, what we'll need to do anyway for the Champions League, is much more. I've got 18 players and I'm comfortable playing all of them. I'm comfortable playing Tomiyasu at left back in the Champions League on Wednesday night and sitting Zinchenko and then bringing him back in on Saturday. And I'm comfortable playing Trossard in one game. We just need more of those guys, basically. We need couple more Jorginhos, couple more Trossards. If we get someone like Declan Rice, we can manage Partey much better. We can manage Xhaka much better. We just need to thicken the pool of players. I think that's why some of these players have played minutes in the Europa League. And look, we're going to ask them to do more than that in the Champions League next year. But it's because we just literally haven't had the players. And you look at some of the things Arteta's tried to do in the transfer market. I think we'll see a winger in the summer. He tried to buy Mudryk. He's tried to buy Rafinha. He clearly wants another Martinelli. I think he wants another explosive wide player, to really come on and change games, to really swap, basically an upgrade on Reece Nelson, I think is what I'm getting at here. But yeah, I think that's more about the journey we're on. And next season, I've been, for one of the first times ever, I've been a fuck the cups guy. Sorry, I should have advanced warning of the swearing, but I've been the cups guy. And I've never really been that guy before, but I've been the cups. Next season, I'm not going to be that guy, and neither is anyone else. People have accepted it this year. I accepted it. I thought it was pragmatic. Next year, we can't be doing that. We can't be doing that if we're going to be a serious team. So we need to just deepen the pool of and have 18, 19 players that just feel like they can go in first 11 without missing a beat.
Yeah. Well, so I want to spend a lot of the remainder of this pod talking about where we go from here, because I will admit, at around the 60-minute mark of this game, a lot of people have said, "Oh, where's your anger? Where's the outrage?" First of all, I don't feel that. I felt resignation, and one of the reasons I think I don't feel anger and outrage, right? You guys have heard me. I've expressed some anger and outrage on this pod before, because we sucked. We had a shit director of football and a shit manager and a bunch of shit players who don't care and weren't fit to wear the badge and embarrassed us routinely. And we played shit football, and it was hard to watch. But you know what? Now we have brilliant young players that are easy to love, and an Arsenal man managing the club who espouses the values we care about and has brought football that has delighted us most of the season. And we've got Arsenal people all the way right through the club, and we've pushed Manchester City all the way to the title. And so I felt resignation and not anger, because how could I really, really be angry at this group when I'm going to be loving them for the next 4, 5, 6 seasons? Hopefully, right? Then there's a place for being really angry when we do stupid shit. But I think seeing the distance between us and City, all I could think of is, okay, that's still the chasm we have to cross. We haven't crossed it yet. So I couldn't connect to any other feeling. But where I was nervous, where I was worried, is where we go from here. Because if we really shit the bed and throw away a bunch of points on the run in now and don't stay close and don't finish near them and really look more like the team that came up short last season than the team that pushed City all the way this season, that I think can have a knock-on effect, and I think that would not be good. So I want to talk about that a bit, but just quickly before we get to that, Clive, it is very, 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 very hard to analyze the end stages of a game that is kind of over and everybody knows it's over. And you can look at performances in that stage of the game. Those players were brilliant. They deserve to be rewarded. But like those players didn't have to play when the game was hot and mattered. But I do think Nelson looked good. I do think Trossard looked good. I do think some of the subs came on and looked good. Were there any performances by the subs that have you thinking? I mean, if you're Mikel Arteta, it's stick or twist time. You got to go in and win the rest of these games. He didn't twist in this game. Is he going to twist? Should he stick? What do you think of the sub performances and where it takes us next?
I think when we all saw the team, we all went, yep, that's the team I expected. And when we saw a couple of the players, we realised that Granit Xhaka wasn't ready to play. Right, so because that's not a Granit Xhaka that I recognise, and the Rob Holding thing, I know what he is, so you have to adjust to it, and we chose not to. Right, so we chose to leave him 1-on-1 with the best centre forward in the world. So you get what you get, right? So I'm not too concerned by that. I think Trossard has shown over recent weeks that he's a very good football player, and the fear that ran through me at Southampton, it was quite clear who was not afraid at the moment and who was a little bit afraid at the moment. And Trossard's one of these people that has a solid technique and he's not afraid at the moment. And I wish he scored a winning goal because he would have deserved it. And I like this player as an interior player. I like him as an 8. I like him as a false 9. I like him as a 10. I don't mind him as a winger if he's got a fullback dancing around him. He's just a very smart football player that makes good decisions, that belongs at a top 6 club. And I think he's shown that. And I think we're a good home for him. Jorginho, you know my thoughts, Elliot. You buy a player like that for moments like this. So rather than play someone that's ill, play the guy that's won the European Championships at Wembley, won a Champions League against City, that understands big games and big moments and has level of experience that we bought for just this moment. And I would have played him and Partey together and I would have gone that way around. Now, other people will say, no, we need to push them back. And the game state, after being 1-0 down after 6 minutes, maybe made us carry on pressing and pushing. But for me, we didn't quite have enough there. So I think Trossard and Jorginho have shown they are useful players for this group. And whether Jorginho stays next year, that's a debate, by the way. And whether he stays next year, we'll see what happens. But Trossard, I think, can be really, really useful. We need more of him. I think looking further forward, I can't help but say this. I don't want to say it because it feels like it's not good analysis. But I do think...
I trust you.
Yeah, I've been saying... I always look at the same things. I look at my competitive landscape. I look at what they're doing. And they are powering up, sizing up, speeding up. And we need to power up and size up. Because if we don't, we're going to get overcome and overwhelmed by these teams. Either on set pieces or in big transitions. So we have to decide what we want to do. So we need another centre-back that can manage big spaces. We need another 1 or 2 centre-mids that can travel. And for me, potentially we need a different style centre-forward that allows us to go over the press. And when we have these different ways of playing, then we can really challenge the manager to change his strategy and his principles on certain occasions because he has the tools to do that. I don't think we have enough diversity of tools to use to change how we want to play, if we have to. So what we do is layer on top what we currently do. We've done so well. I've learned so much through this guy, Arteta, about how to set up a football team, how to create pods and communications and connections, how to play in small places, and how to have agile carriers in top end of pitch and really connect, get the ball on the move, invert, all this stuff none of us had talked about a year ago. And here we are, fully signed up and experts. Like we've always known it. Well, I haven't. And I'm going to put my hand up and say it. What Zinchenko has showed me, I haven't seen it. But a year later, it's already coming out of fashion, and we have to go again. And that's the way football is. You have to evolve, you have to go again. And we have to. And we can't be too proud to do it. We've been slapped in the face, and we need to do it. And we need to say, okay, next phase. Bigger, stronger centre forward option. Do it. Eddie and Jesus, two the same. Make a decision. I may have 3 forwards, could we go into more competitions? Or you make sure you have two different forwards. We absolutely need another sprint on the outside areas. We do. And we need a right-footed centre-back and play left and right. That's what we need. And someone who can really run. And so it's all there, right? It's clear. Paul said it last night, the word I couldn't stop sleeping. Clarity. We have clarity. Don't ignore what you've seen. We have it. Don't forget this day and make sure you react to it.
Yeah, well said. Let's turn the ship towards the future and look at the run-in, because I think that is the critical piece now. And I think it's interesting because Mikel Arteta was very clear to talk about that as well in his post-match comments. That was really the big theme. The irony is, I think most of the comments were geared towards what happens next, not what happened in this game. And that I think that is going to have a big impact. But let's start this segment that everybody loves so much about. Elliot tells you about companies. Tim, we're going to be letting you go soon, so I'll go to you. For me, this is a beautiful. Some people have asked me, why aren't you angrier? What's changed? Where's your anger? I think that's what I'm known for, being the angry guy, I guess. It is the fact that I love this team in a lot of ways, and this manager, and there's so many things that I love about this season. I felt resignation yesterday, but I'll tell you what would, I think, really get my anger back, if that's what people want, is if we just shit the bed and threw the whole season away. Chelsea are dreadful. They're coming to the Emirates on Tuesday. We have time to recover from this. With Rob Holding, we have not really been able to play our football. But with Rob Holding, we did have a 2-goal lead at Anfield, and we did have a 2-goal lead at West Ham, and we did have 3 goals that we scored against Southampton, almost a 4th. So, for me, the most important thing, forget the title for a minute. Forget that if we win all our games, we make City have to go win the title, which I'd love to see. But even forget that. I think it is important for this team. I think it is important for the fan base and the team and the manager that we finish within 2 points or 3 points or 1 point of City at the end of the season, and not 9 points back where the narrative is, they were in it for a while, but really, were they ever in it? They kind of collapsed in April and fell away badly and lost some bad games. We need, I think, all of us to come away from this season feeling we were genuinely in it, which we were. But it would really be a shame if we blew that now. And so I think these next few games, starting with Chelsea, we've got to see the backbone back in the team. So what do you expect? Do you think that with the pressure off a bit, we'll see some of the lightness and fun and good football come back? Or are you worried a little about this turning into a not so close finish at the end? Where are you thinking on the last few games?
Honestly, I'm about 50-50. I really think either could happen. I tend to think I probably err slightly more on the side that perhaps some of the pressure's gone. Perhaps, we get some of that lightness back. Perhaps Arteta does make a kind of adjustment somewhere. But I think we have to prepare, we have to acknowledge the fact that, because all of us have got these ideas about things that we should have done in the last few games, but you have to factor in that all of that might not have made a difference. It might even have made things worse for all we know. But Chelsea just feels like a good opportunity for me. This feels like the sort of game where you can beat a big team who aren't a big team at the moment, if you know what I mean. Yeah. There's not a direct comparison to be made here, but when we beat Real Madrid in 2006 and that belief propelled us to the Champions League final, in terms of your belief, no one really cared that was an aging Real Madrid team and most of those players were gone that summer because it was all aging out and everything like that. So, sometimes beating a name just gives you that little bit of something. We need something at the moment, basically. We're feeling a bit sorry for ourselves. We're a little bit cowed. Chelsea have completely checked out for the season. And it's whether they continue in that vein or whether they find some kind of wave of energy for this game. I don't know, but even if they do, we're better than them. So just go out and beat them, and at least give yourselves and the fans that good feeling again of beating a rival and a team you don't like at home. Give us all the chance to actually laugh at Chelsea because they're having a terrible season, and we should enjoy that while they're in close proximity, and don't give us the kind of game where we draw 1-1 or lose 1-0. And, I think we just need a bit of good feeling back. We need a bit of a hug, basically, at the moment. And beating Chelsea would just be, and not least as well, because we got Newcastle away after that, and that's going to be another really tough game. It does feel maybe Southampton accepted, but Southampton are playing for something, and you don't want to play teams that are playing for things. If we play Southampton at home in November or January, there's no chance that game finishes 3-3 in my view. So, we need, I think, as well, to put ourselves on a better track going into that Newcastle game, particularly because that's going to be a big game. They're going to be up for it. They're really playing for something. They're playing well. And we need to bring a bit of the good feeling back. So if I were Arteta, I'd be selling this to the players, a great opportunity. Look, you can go and murder Chelsea at home in front of all your fans and bring that happiness back to yourselves and your fans. And at that point, you can start to think a little bit more about how we end this season. But really, all thought should be on the Chelsea game, and then the rest of the season will take care of itself either way. But I think it's pivotal in how we finish. I think what happens, the performance we see on Tuesday will tell you how Arsenal are going to finish this season.
Yeah. Clive, do you think that the run-in matters? I mean, obviously we can still win the title, so of course it matters. If we win all our games and City shit the bed, we can still be champions. But the likely outcome is that on Saturday or Sunday, whenever City play Fulham, it'll be the first time that they will go above us, and we will officially be behind City, where I think a lot of us expect us to finish at this point. By the way, Tim is going to head out as we start to turn the corner towards the finish here. Tim's on Twitter at Stillmanator. Thanks, Tim.
My pleasure as always.
Is it important? I mean, look, every game is important. The whole point of football club is to win games. How important is it that we go finish this with pride and with quality and stay close and make it a big finish, and start that by beating a hated rival that's in a very bad moment on Tuesday? Do you think ultimately that does wind up mattering? Because to be fair, we can all fall victim to narrative. We all thought the way we collapsed last season, Clive, we're like, well, that's it. We collapsed, and that's who Arsenal is. And what did we do? Did we go on to finish 7th this season? No, we nearly won the title, and may still. So, do you think it matters how we finish from here?
I think last night's game really mattered on how we were perceived. So if you're a young player, a young international player that just think about coming to Arsenal, and you saw that last night, and you thought, you know what? I've got a place there. I like how they're approaching things. This is a counteract to me being a bit more pragmatic. I like how they approach things. I like their bravery. I like the fact they show no fear no matter where they go. And they're full of young players, youngest team in the league. I want to go there. If we fall apart, I think we have a slight damage to our reputation, even though we've exceeded people's original expectations. And I want to see us end the league really strong. I want to be clearly the second best team that pushed them really closely, because no one else has got themselves together to do that. If we fall back into the clutches of Manchester United, for example, and they finish a few points behind us and win the FA Cup and the League Cup, and that gap's really close, I don't want that discussion online. I don't want that debate. I want us to be clearly the second best team, clearly the team on the uptick. Players can smell when a team is going forward, and we are going forward. And the most important thing for me, the most important thing this season has been the unity within the fan base, the unity within the club. And if we were to fall apart, that would be under threat. No matter what people say right now, it would be threatened. There will be anger, there will be responses. And I don't want that, because I don't think the season deserves that. So I think it's really important how we finish. so we can plan for the summer accordingly, get the players we all want because we are super attractive, and then we get the players we want last night, will just be a step on the way to success.
Yeah. And by the way, we are officially qualified for Champions League. Yeah. Nobody wants perspective right now, right? Nobody wants to be like, well, in the beginning of the season, you would have taken this. Like, I get that because that's not where we are now. I mean, maybe the time for anger was West Ham or Southampton. Now it isn't. And there are probably people listening, by the way. There's some of you probably listening being like, guys, why are you talking like the title's gone? The title's not gone.
Yeah.
And that's what I was going to go to you, Paul. I mean, if you're Mikel, would you try to go more with the guys? Let's forget the title now. Let's just go beat Chelsea and show a little bit of our class and our quality. And now some of the pressure's off. You know what? Now it's on City. We get to just enjoy our football. Or would you keep that pressure on? Would you try to make them feel that there's still a title to battle for? Because I admit, I am sort of writing it off. I mean, I expect City to beat Fulham on Saturday, go a point ahead of us, and finish thereabouts. How does Mikel approach it? How do the players approach it? Do they have to continue to believe there's a title on the line?
Look, I learned so much podcasting with you guys. From Tim, I learned professionalism in podcasting. So I'm going to say this. I'm about to say the word fuck.
Okay.
What the fuck, guys? Like, don't get me wrong. I feel exactly the same way you do, right? But doesn't take much perspective to realize we're still 2 points ahead in the league.
We are top of the league. Yeah, we are top of the league.
We are top of the league. They've got tough away games coming up, in that they're away games against teams who want something against them. They're going to be in the Champions League. They have this thing they invented called injuries. You don't know who they'll strike or when. Everybody loves those prediction models, 5-3-8. Scott does a great one. City are projected for 89 points. Now, they're also projected at a 90% chance to win the league, which means we got a 10% chance. I suggest we lean into that 10% and do everything we can to grow that 10%. Now, injuries can hit us. We could be unfortunate, but we could go and win our next 5 games, at which point we have 90 points, and 5-3-8 projects City will get 89 points, right? Okay. They don't project we'll get 90 points, but we can go and, like, what else are we going to do? Anybody else got anything they're busy with over the next few weeks within our squad? Maybe we could try and win those 5 games. Like, we can beat Wolves. We can beat Brighton at home. We can beat Chelsea at home. There's 3.
Sure, but just one thing, Paul. Do you think the psychology of maybe taking away? Look, you never want to think my team is so weak mentally that they have to think nothing's on the line to win. But like, they've been playing under this pressure for so long, maybe they cracked a bit. Is the psychology of feeling like it's maybe lifted slightly a benefit? Yes. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Look, the inevitable train was coming, right? And they're thinking, I hope the train gets derailed. But like, the train has been and gone. It's hit us. We're battered, bruised, couple of broken bones, but we're alive, right? The train has gone through, and you're like, well, we're not facing that train again. Now we get to play 5 games against teams who are not Manchester City. They have their problems. They need to go off and play in the Champions League. They need to manage their home schedule. We've got to focus on, we can have a brilliant second place finish, or we might actually fucking win. And so the psychology, I think, nobody's going to talk about us. The media aren't going to keep asking us dumb questions. They're going to ask you the question, do you still think you have a chance, blah, blah, blah. So for a young team who was maybe suffering from that level of spotlight and focus and this train coming along of the Manchester City game, and look, the game's gone. We got 5 games to go, win all 5. We did this 2 seasons ago when there was nothing on the line. We couldn't get top 4. We won we won 9 of our last 10 or something like that. Maybe we won 8 and drew 2. In a kind of a dead rubber season at that point, it was very, very meaningful. And this different bunch of players, but this manager, this team, this club went and finished strong. Like, we've nothing else to do. Go and win the 5 games. Like, we might be 88 points versus their 89. That's pretty fucking cool. We might be 90 versus their 89. They might, like, if they're projected for 89, what if they lose an extra game? There's a thing called football where the bounce of the ball can be unpredictable. Players get injured, red cards get given, penalties, weird VAR decisions, right? Anything can fucking happen. And if I'm Mikel Arteta, I say, all right, everybody, breathe. Let's go again. Nobody's looking at us. We're under the radar. Let's get back to playing our best football. Let's show this league who we are. Let's position ourselves to win. We're still top of the league.
Yeah. I mean, Clive, he basically said, we have to move on. We will be very silly if this affects us in the next few weeks. So this is a difficult one. We have to accept the reality, and then we have to move on. We have to try to help the players and paint the reality of where we are. Today, we played against a team that were the best at that level. It's who can keep at that level. That is the question. And that, to Paul's point, there is still plenty to play for. I will confess, and the whole tone of this podcast has been that it is gone. In a way, that has relieved the stress from me a bit. Maybe that will relieve the stress from the players a bit. But elite sport is strange and weird things happen. We have seen some very, very unexpected things happen in football. I mean, teams throw it away, they get it back, then they throw it away again. My expectation, like I said, is that City will beat Fulham and they will be top of the league going into our game against Chelsea. What's for you? Do we have to? So we need to win these games. We've agreed that. Do we have to make substantial changes? Like, is it time to go away from Rob Holding? Is it time to make tweaks? How do you approach this? Because the City game in isolation you could walk away from, but it can't be taken in isolation. It's got to be taken in this run of 4 games. And I sort of think we've reached a point where the manager probably has to make a change. Do you think he will? Do you think he should?
It depends what you take away from the City game. I take away from it that there's a gap there. And at this moment in time, I feel like we're the second best team in the league. And if I felt we were the best team in the league, I would be incredibly positive about these next 5 games. We can win all 5 and still be the second best team in the league in my mind. Because what I saw last night was one of the best performances from a team against us that I've seen in many years. Right? So I thought it was excellent in everything they did. And these were not bargains. These were top level players that are well established internationally and within our league. And maybe one player in that group that was new to the league this season, new to the level in Akanji, for example, and he had a great game. So we're sitting there as the pretenders. So I know this in my mind. Everything tells us that's what we are. And we line up in a tunnel, that's what we look like. But that's not a bad place to be. For me, we look better than Liverpool this season, properly look better than them. And we spent years in this podcast talking about Liverpool like they were gods. So they've been caught. When this time last year, we talked about the Spurs and Newcastle games. Well, we put 25, 30 points on Spurs. So they've been bopped. So Newcastle, I know what I'll be saying to the players for a Newcastle game. We owe them. All right, Chelsea, the away game this year, the gap was huge, even though it's 1-0. Let's make sure we confirm that gap. So it is really about confirming yourself within the league and making sure you approach these games with the right level of fervour and aggression and all the things that we've been driven by this season. So I hear what Paul's saying, and he's absolutely right. It was a great Any Given Sunday speech, right? It's a great speech, and he's totally right. He's absolutely right, because we need to get a snap of reality, right? We are sitting there 2 points clear, and they've still got it to do. And I will say the Real Madrid games may leave them feeling like we're feeling today. A bit drained emotionally from a huge game, or it could lift them to a new level because their targets are becoming clear now. They're playing 3 competitions, and so the weight of pressure is now going to flip onto them. And when they beat us last time, they went to Notts Forest at the very next weekend, and drew 1-1 and gave away the points they just gained on us. So things can happen, but if you ask me honestly, in my heart of hearts, I want to win this league knowing we're the best team. And I know you might say, you win it, Clive. Don't worry about it. If they lose 3 games, they deserve to lose it. But I want to be the best team.
I'm not fussed, Clive.
Yeah, I want to.
I want to win it your way, Clive, but I'm also comfortable winning it in literally
and
any other way.
I know that's. And by the way, if they lost 3 games in a trot, mate, I'll be booking hotels and I'll be telling my wife I'm not going to see her for at least a week, right? So that's part of that. But you know what I'm trying to say there, philosophically, I want us to be so clear the best team that it's not a debate, and we're not there yet. So yeah, let's see how we go. But we just got to focus on next 5. Chelsea number 1. Focus on that. And Newcastle, they need to get it. You know, they really do.
Chelsea's going to be interesting because if we play the badge on their chest and we play the form that we're in and we make that difficult for ourselves, that'll be really instructive because they're very, very bad right now. Very bad. And Lampard is out of his depth and he's throwing out crazy lineups out there. And I think Mikel just has a really tricky problem because Partey looks a little jaded, like he's carrying a knock. Xhaka didn't look right in that game. Rob Holding, I just don't know if he can play anymore.
Should we go through it? Should we go?
Yeah.
No, seriously, should we go?
Through it.
Well, let's go through it. Right? Ramsdale, I thought that's a great recovery game. But people are critiquing him on the first goal. I don't. But I thought he was very low.
From there, he saves our ass. Yeah. Great.
But I thought that shot went out to in, outside the post and came in. So good luck saving that. That's my view. I thought Ben White's been decent. Rob Holding hit his level. Gabriel destabilised, but he's still a very good player. Zinchenko, a bit emotional maybe on occasions, but still top quality. Partey looks a bit jaded, and I think his role's become bigger and he's struggling. Our 2 8s in Xhaka and Odegaard, can't find them with a torch. Can't find them, mate. Can't find them. The centre forward, he's looking jaded for the first time in Jesus. His power and zip has gone. Saka, I wasn't too worried when he played the 2 internationals for England, but I can see those games with his legs now, and it's been coming, right? And his head is just dropping a little bit. And Martinelli, 11 touches. When have you seen that? So they just need, I spoke about going to a health spa last weekend. You can see it, can't you? They need to go back there this weekend and make sure they just recover themselves physically and emotionally and reset their goals for Chelsea. So important to get that win, and then we go from there.
Yeah, interesting the lineup against Chelsea because he has the moral quandary at that point that maybe players he was pushing that are, like, let's take an example. Maybe Partey has been carrying something all along, and that's like for the City game he has to play against Chelsea, you may say, well, I'm going to put in Jorginho and give him, like, it'll be interesting to see if he makes 1 or 2 changes, and that may tell us something about who's carrying what, who's not in the shape, because he's basically going to play those 11 every game. And now he has the moral quandary of, okay, it's not City, it's Chelsea, and like, it hasn't gone, but it's not what it was against Chelsea. It wasn't the title contending playoff game kind of thing. So the lineup could tell us a little something against Chelsea, who really shouldn't be playing right now.
I think he has to find a way. And look, it starts to sound mean-spirited. So I want to be clear that I don't mean it that way. I think he has to find a way to start without Rob Holding because teams have figured out how to hurt us when he's on the pitch. They figured out to leave him alone, let him have all the touches and the passes. They figured out how to press, use that extra space to press other players and disconnect our lines. Our line height gets lower, our distances get bigger. I just think teams have figured out his weaknesses, and it's too much of a gap. And I don't mean it to be mean-spirited. I mean, I think it's a real problem for our football that if we don't go with,
what could you possibly do that doesn't change the system? Because you can't
you could look. Right. I realize it's a weird thing to do. I have been told that at times Tierney has played right back for Scotland. Maybe look, it's not ideal, but you just do it and you push White to center back, and he hasn't played center back all season. And by the way, Paul, I want to be clear. I'm not saying we have an obvious solution that why didn't we just do that? I'm saying we've reached a nadir with this situation.
Have no solution.
Right. It might be. But what I would say at this point, right? So prior to this, and let's not be wise after the fact, I thought stick with the 10 best players in their 10 best positions and hope that Rob Holding can do what he needs to do. I've been very clear on that. I think at this point, if you don't try something else, you're wishing more than you are believing. At this point, I think it is wish casting. Yeah.
Yeah, but even if Tierney's a good right back. You've taken Ben White from the pod on the right hand side. You know, this is.
So let me flip the question around then,
Yeah.
Paul. Do you think we can be effective over 90 minutes and win all of our remaining games if we continue to use Rob Holding, given what we've seen teams do to target how we play when he's in? And Clive, I'll come to you on this too.
Look, I see the same dilemma. I just think you don't do something to shoot yourself in the other foot, and that might be what happens if you try and do something weird and wonderful, and then you've basically blown it. Rob, you're so bad that we're going to play Kieran Tierney out right back. Oh, next game is Rob, we're back to you. That didn't work out.
It's a bit of a trolley problem, I confess.
It is.
But I think the problem is, right, if you are doing something that isn't working and you don't know what else might work, I don't think not changing it is the answer. Maybe what you change it to also doesn't work, but it has. Let's put it this way, right? What we change it to, Paul, could work. What we've been doing doesn't work.
Didn't work. No,
it hasn't.
Didn't work.
Yeah, hasn't
we could play better with the pressure. A couple of changes upfield. Bring in Trossard. Rob Holding's okay. That has knock-on team effects. I not seeing it totally different to you. Don't get me wrong. I'm like the coach has to look at the dressing room too. Rob, we don't believe in you and we think it was your fault. We need you back because that was even worse.
Yeah, I mean, look, I don't that stuff. I think this is grown up football. Like, I'm sorry, but Rob, you aren't good enough. We're going to go with somebody else. Okay, they weren't good enough. I need you to play 4 more games and then you're done at Arsenal. But
grown up managing is realizing there is.
Can't always be an arm around the shoulder, right? I mean, he hasn't done that with Emil Smith Rowe, has he?
No, that's totally different.
Right, but all right. Well, anyway, Clive, how do we, and if so, how do we change this? I mean, I don't, like, we haven't been dreadful, but I do think teams have figured out an answer to this that we are struggling to cope with. You know,
I think
center back line.
Teams are. They're letting him have the ball, right? And his distribution is not the best. It's not the worst, but it's like, you know, I learned it from basketball. Sometimes you double team the star and let the other guys try to beat you. They're double teaming our stars. They're smashing them out wide, and they're letting Rob Holding be our playmaker. We tried to circumnavigate that by bringing Partey in to help him. And then now everyone's killing Rob Thomas Partey because he's got too many jobs to do. And so it's a challenge. So we may have to do something. Hey, look, there are lots of people with lots of options. My primary thing was just to bring in Jorginho, particularly when Xhaka was down, and really create a box there. And that's what I would have done. But if you're looking to protect Holding with Holding in the team, but if you're looking to take Holding out, then the best way to take Holding out is to go to a back 3 and defend with a back 4 diamond and choose your wing backs, right? And that's the best way because you could use Kivior in that back 3 and have Gabriel as a central player and White on one side. Some people like Tierney in the back 3. I think it can work for some minutes. I think Rob Holding's much happier in the back 3 than he is in the back 4. You know, so but that is throwing your principles away. You know, but sometimes a new system, what it does, it re-energizes people with new roles. And sometimes you just do this to keep people really alive and connected, you know, and they get re-enthused again. And I've often used new systems just to keep people awake, keep people going, and so that's a possibility. And I would definitely think about it. But I must say that there was a point in that first half yesterday I was thinking, this has got to change. But then I went away from it. As the game went away from us, I stopped thinking about it anymore because it was too late. But we look vulnerable. We're giving chances. He's getting nutmegged on goals. People are running off. He can't be aggressive. Can you imagine Rob Holding yesterday? He's probably thinking, I don't want to smash him. Last year I smashed Son and cost us the top 4. I want to stay on this pitch. I don't want to go too tight. And that's exactly what they wanted. They didn't want him to be overly aggressive. They wanted him to be passive, and we were passive. And that created one-on-ones all over. But I totally don't blame him. I really don't. He must have been in turmoil in that game before the game, just wondering if he was going to be the guy to let us down. You know, and that's it. And so I don't blame him, and I don't want it to be about one person. It's about the collective. We've more than Rob Holding is a quality thing, but we have some quality players that have hit the wall at the same time, and we should hold our hands up and admit that.
Yeah, it reminded me.
Play better in the rest of the pitch, and it's a big question how much you want to change to get Rob Holding off the pitch. I think
to be clear, Paul, I agreed with you.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not trying to be wise after the fact. I felt we should play our 10 best players in their 10 best places and let Rob Holding do what Rob Holding could do. My worry is, after watching that game and the 3 that preceded it, is that teams have unlocked a little bit of a strategy for dealing with us in that setup. And the Rob Holding performance yesterday, it reminded me, you know what it reminded me a little bit of is Marie against Lukaku. Like, just couldn't solve the problem.
When he ruined Lukaku's career at Chelsea from there on?
Yeah, by letting him get too cocky, too confident. And it really, I mean, it just a problem he wasn't up to the level to solve. And maybe it is the case, by the way, that we can solve other problems and we shouldn't read too much into this. I think we should leave it there. We can look ahead to Chelsea more on Monday. I shudder to think what the rewatch is going to be like for this. I mean, like you talk about giving the people what they want. Like, we're definitely going to be giving the people what they want over on the Patreon side of things.
City Vision post-match rewatch.
It is weird because even though there have been down moments this season, I think it is the first really low moment where this team has dropped points, but I don't know that it's been outclassed in this way by anybody all season long. And so the struggle to process it is real. And I think that there's 2 ways you can go with it, right? You can go with the blame Arsenal for the things Arsenal did poorly, or you can go with the praise City to high heavens for being otherworldly. And the answer, as usual, is probably somewhere in between. My regret on this day is not what happened to us defensively so much, because you could maybe see that in the mail. It's that we never really imposed ourselves on the game. And I do want to give credit to Nelson's sub-performance. I thought he was quite good. I thought Trossard was quite good. Nelson has looked like a real player when he's played for us this season. And that's something that we might want to keep an eye on for the future.
It's quite interesting looking at the contrast between him and Smith Rowe. It's clear as day. People are looking at Vieira and Smith Rowe, but you should be looking at Nelson and Smith Rowe. And look what Nelson does with his minutes versus what Smith Rowe has done. And I know people say he hasn't had a chance, but just look at what your eyes are telling you, and you can see where the problem could be.
Nelson's gone up a level. Yeah. And like it's worth talking about at some point. It is also a little bit difficult to evaluate games that are already gone when teams have somewhat shut off. And I mean, all City had to do was just decide to flip the switch back on just for a second, and they got their 4th. I do feel for Smith Rowe, though, right? Like, he can't get on the pitch for Arsenal. When do you get on the pitch? 3-0 down at the Etihad. Like, it is, not a moment to show yourself.
Smith Rowe and Nelson are not the story, and I take your point. You wanted to mention the fact that he's had a good performance. I think that's worth it. So I brought Smith Rowe into it probably unfairly, but
still 20 minutes for Smith Rowe. You know what I mean? It adds up.
Not in our bet, it doesn't. All right, let's leave it there. Look, everybody process. Take a minute to process. I think we'll go into the Chelsea game properly fired up. I think they're the best opposition we could have in a way, because it's at home, under the lights, a hated rival in a really bad moment. It's not some bottom of the league team scrapping relegation where we struggle to get up for it. Like, you can always get up for Chelsea. They're not playing well. They've got very little to fight for, and they're coming to our den. And I think that it's the right fixture. If we're going to get right, it feels like the right fixture. So let's see how we handle it. And we'll talk about that more over the next few days. So we'll leave it there. Tim has already departed this mortal coil. Well, he hasn't departed the mortal coil. He's departed the podcast. Paul's on Twitter. Pause my pants. Thanks, Pause.
Woohoo.
Clive's on Twitter. Clive PFC. Thanks, Clive.
Thank you very much.
Really interesting, right? Because once upon a time, we dissected results like this all the time. This podcast was forged in the fires of late Arsene Wenger and early Unai Emery. This used to be where we lived and swam, was dissecting disappointing defeats in big games. It feels so unnatural breaking this down. We haven't had to do an episode on a game like this in a long time. And let's hope that there is no return to our core values of breaking down disappointing performances, and that we can stick with what we learned this season. So be careful out there. Be nice to everybody. We love you. Thanks again to Andrew for his stunning contribution to the fundraiser, contributing his April proceeds to the fundraiser, which is now at just a staggering level. So thanks everyone for that. We'll leave it there. We carry on. We keep hope alive. And we see what happens. We love you. And we'll talk to you after Arsenal 10. Chelsea, no.